Today I have an interesting question. What is occupational therapy? Well, since I'm not a medical practitioner and that's not my field, then unfortunately I can't give you an answer. But I was first exposed to this branch of medical practice, occupational therapy, when I worked in the civil service in the Department of Works and Pensions. That's back when I lived in Scotland. Now, there was this idea in the office, and from my colleagues who worked in other places, even in the private sector, there was this idea, excuse me, this idea over in Scotland and in the rest of the UK that um, because of uh, because of certain repetitive tasks that you do at work, you're prone to certain kinds of injuries. So, for instance, those of us who worked in the Department of Works and Pensions, a lot of the stuff that we did was computer related. So, we're working with computer screens all the time, or uh, lifting physical files back and forth. But the file work was once in a while. But a lot of times, a lot of the work we did was mostly computer work. So, we're given lots of training um, on ergonomics, how best to sit behind a computer, the best way to set it, the right height for your chair, things like that. All this little training here and there to make sure that we excuse me, that we didn't sustain any neck injuries or back injuries or cramps in the fingers over time. So that was the first time that I was exposed to this idea of occupational therapy. Now, coming back to Nigeria, and I've been home for a while, I'm glad to see that the awareness of these sorts of things is taking root. Sorry, it's taking hold. And the reason why I remembered it is because one of my sisters-in-law, one of my sister-in-laws is an occupational therapist based in Benin. So it's really interesting that it's now, maybe it has always been a recognized field of study in Nigeria. I don't know, but I'm beginning to see more occupational therapists and people like that pop out of the woodwork who pay attention to things like this. Now, why did I remember occupational therapy and why is this important? It's because yesterday I was on the website of an Australian photographer that I follow, that I really like her work. She's a much older woman. I think she's close to 60, and so she wrote a post about how she was recovering from injuries to her back and to her knees, because when she was much younger, her focus was on looking slim and being attractive. So she dieted and she did the right kind of exercises just to keep slim and attractive, but she wasn't paying attention to her overall health, and she wasn't paying attention to the kind of risks that we face as photographers. Now, photographers, we do a lot of work standing. For instance, when I shoot weddings on a typical day, I'm going to be on my feet for about 12 hours straight. That's from roughly 6, 7 in the morning until 7 in the evening. Now, I'm not going to be shooting the whole time, but basically, I'm going to be on my feet, moving things around, looking for interesting camera angles, interacting with people, things like that. And it takes a toll. It takes a toll on your knees, on your back, on your feet, and then some of us lug around heavy gear. Like I shoot with two camera bodies and two extra flashes, and then with the belt and everything considered. But basically, my toolkit, the case itself, when everything is in the case, is 12 kilograms. But I don't know how heavy. Excuse me. I don't know how heavy my the two camera bodies are, but basically I'm lugging that around for 12 hours, and that was the same sort of problem that this elderly woman faced, because she is more of a fashion photographer, so she's um, constantly on set, long days shooting, and she handles all her own post production. So that means she was doing her own editing behind the computer. Anyway, so that's the reason why I just remembered all of that, because I think it's something that we need to pay attention to in whatever work it is that we do. So if you're in the civil service or you're in the corporate sector, you're working a lot with computers, you need to pay attention to these things. Is your chair at the right height? Is the computer at the right height? Is your keyboard where it's supposed to be? Because these are the things that make a difference between whether you could develop arthritis in your fingers later on, or have pain on your upper back or lower back, or whether there's too much glare from the computer screen, and then that damages your eyes. So, what is occupational therapy? I have no idea, but I hope you now have a better idea from listening to me talk on about all these things. You know, the some of the dangers that we are, some of the little dangers that we don't quite recognize that we're exposed to because of the routine things that we do every day at work. So if you're one of these people who are already beginning to feel some things, maybe let's say you work in a bank and you're having breathing issues because you work in the counting room and there's dirty naira notes that are being counted all the time. There are people that you can talk to. You can see your regular doctor, and your doctor probably refer you to an occupational therapist who's going to walk you through everything. You know, whether give you medicine or physiotherapy or whatever it is that you need to get better. So whether you're a photographer, a civil servant, you work in the corporate space, or you're an artist, be aware that you could be injured on the job. The people that are going to help you out are occupational therapists.